So for many, this is the last week of relaxation before you head on back to work next week. And if you have some anxiety about going back to work, trust me, you are not alone. So we get you some tips now in terms of what you can do to boost your morale and change your mindset. Anja van Beek is a talent strategist, leadership and HR expert, as well as an executive coach. She joins us now to help us with this. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much, Anja, for joining us. Perhaps let's start with this report that was done by PwC. It would appear that a lot of people are contemplating resigning this year. Why?
Yeah, so if you can remember over the last few years with all the challenges, the complexity and the changes that we have seen in the workplace, a lot of the people are actually looking for greener pastures, to have a look and say, is there something out there that might be more beneficial for myself, where I can actually put more of myself into the role. And they're also almost hesitant of, is this the right place to be, especially after the year when, as you've mentioned, they're not sure if they're ready to go back to the workplace. Now, what the PwC research found was that they had a look at the hybrid ways of work, people going back to the office, and interesting, as you've highlighted, that 1 out of every 5 employees are contemplating, yes, let me look for something else.
Now, if you are that 1 in 5 employee, what is it that you need to know about, first of all, centering yourself and making a decision that is not based on emotion, but what you're actually looking forward to in terms of the outcome for your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what is so important is for us to remember that the organization and the leadership team will be responsible for creating the culture, that work environment where we can thrive. But for us individuals, we need to take ownership, as you've mentioned, of that mindset. And I think it's so important for us as the first step that I would like to remind people is don't look outside for motivation. Motivation comes from within. So it's almost connecting to what is important to you and where do you find purpose and value in the organization that you're working with. So it might be that if you understand yourself a lot better, you know what is driving you. And if you don't, there's an easy exercise that I can actually suggest to our listeners. And that's simply to list everything that you're doing on a daily basis and then have a look at which activities are you lost in time. Because that's most probably something that is an innate strength of you. And that's where you need to focus. For some people, it might be servicing other departments, sharing your knowledge. For some people, it is being in a leadership role. It's actually irrelevant what it is. I think the important part is to connect internally. You've mentioned the word mindset. And it really starts with that mindset of, yes, let me have a look at my role, let me have a look at my day, and focus on those things where I do add value.
And then there's something that you call a career mosaic. What is that?
Yeah, such a lovely word. So when you think of the traditional way of careers, a lot of the time individuals want to focus on climbing a career ladder. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. It's not necessarily a ladder that you need to climb. You as an individual need to take accountability and craft that ideal career for you. So what does that mean? It simply means being aware of what you love to do, focusing on your strengths, and then have a conversation to say, but is there not a role or a different pathway that I can follow instead of just climbing a ladder? So a lot of the time people focus on this vertical axis and sometimes it's a horizontal movement. So again, taking that ownership and crafting your ideal role.
And you also encourage people to get a mentor or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not here to do it by yourself. I always encourage people to get a thinking partner. And a thinking partner can either be a colleague, but I would recommend that they actually look for a mentor inside the organization or perhaps inside the community where they operate. And a lot of the time when people think of a mentor, they usually think of someone that can support them from a functional perspective. But a mentor can also support you from building a network, focusing on the industry that you're working in. And that's why I suggest get one or two that is not only focusing on one specific aspect alone.
There's something here that touched my heart. Self-care.
Yeah, self-care is so important. I mean, if you just reflect on the past few years, so self-care is essential. And the reason why this is essential is if we want to unlock our high performance, it starts with taking care of your mind, your body, and your soul. And a concept, it's not new in the workplace, but that's drawing a lot of attention, is the whole concept of self-leadership, where we need to be very mindful of our thought patterns, the relationships that we intentionally build, and that actually starts with a relationship with yourself. And it's really focusing on those, what I would call foundational drivers, looking at your sleep-wake cycle, looking at the healthy nutrition, looking at a good exercise routine, and even like myself, I mean, working from home, sometimes you get to work at 8, leave 5, and you sit behind the desk the whole time. So when we think of exercise, it's actually more about just intentional movement throughout the day. And as I said, yeah, that definitely starts with self-care, starting with mindfulness practices. Some people focus on getting a morning routine going. And I think that's where I want to encourage the listeners to find out what works for them. Because for different people, different things work. It might be journaling, it might be the exercise in the morning, whatever it might be. Perhaps it's some reading, expanding your mind. For others, it might be silencing the mind. But whatever works, do that, because that will support you to unlock that high performance for yourself.
Yeah. Anja, what then do you say to somebody that I'm doing all of that? However, my work environment is quite hostile. You hear people saying that you don't leave a bad company, you leave bad managers, right? And that is a reality that many people are faced with, where they feel like they're a resource that is not well utilized. And so what do you say to somebody like that who's like, I know it's time to go?
Yeah, Dudu, it's so unfortunate because that is the reality for many, many people. And I always encourage, if you find yourself in a toxic environment, the first thing that you need to do is to have that, what I would call a crucial conversation with your manager. And then some people will say, yes, Anja, but I have already had a crucial conversation and it's not really making a difference. And I think that is then where you need to take that bold step and go find something else. Because, I mean, we're at work for most of the time, and we don't deserve working in an environment that's toxic. In the end, that's not good for your own mental health. It's not good for finding that purpose in life. And that's when I would recommend someone reach out to your network, have a look at the job boards and what alternatives are out there.
Because then you also hear, well, you know, the unemployment rate in South Africa is so high, you should feel lucky to have a job. To your point of toxic environments where somebody will boldly tell you that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, that's why a lot of the people are hesitant to find or actually even to, focus on something else out there. But in the long run, the toxic environment is not healthy. And if you think of a culture where we build a culture where employees can thrive, that unfortunately does not happen overnight. Having said that, each and every one of us, not only the managers and the leadership, can contribute to a healthy culture. And that starts with dialogue. So in the meantime, while you're looking out there, at least have those open and honest conversations about what's not working, about what is toxic in the work environment. Because if it's not working for you, there's a lot of other people that might not have the courage to speak up. And you were so right to say it really starts with that relationship with your line manager. And perhaps that's where people can focus on in, let me then just see how can I improve my relationship with my manager? And do we have healthy dialogue and healthy conversation about small tweaks that we can make in our team in order to change that environment or the working environment for for us.
Very quickly for us also, Anja, how important to know that if the grass is greener on the other side, the water bill is probably higher. So it doesn't matter which work environment you walk into, right? It starts and ends with the...
Yeah, definitely. So the work environment, as we said, is something that you can't necessarily control. But what you can take ownership of is accountability, your own mindset. And what I always want to encourage people, if you do look for something else, if you do look for another job, be very, very mindful to compare apples with apples. Sometimes people advertise this amazing cost to company, but let's be very clear what's included in there. Let's have a look at the benefits, for example, like leave days, like time off, like flexibility, working from home. There's so many aspects to consider, and don't just jump to the first job that seems to be at a higher pay rate.
Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Anja van Beek is a talent strategist, leadership and HR expert executive. Thank you.